Fucking dogs. They took my phone. We got nothing. What do you mean, guys? They took my phone. They took my phone and they deleted all the photos. No, because they delete everything.
Yeah, tell me your story. Like, what happened? What did they do?
I was just sitting. I come early. I come like at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
And I went inside. I sat. I was walking around. I took few photographs of the place. And suddenly they all surround me, security and the guards, and they called someone to delete the photos that I took in my phone, all the photos. And then I went outside, and I was messing with the phone, and they come again, and they say you're not allowed to take photos outside either.
Just keep you all together, is that alright?
Yeah. No, it's not.
I wasn't there time this happened.
Yes.
I will endeavour to find it out for you, okay?
Please. I'm here to protest against the white helmets receiving a peace prize in Ireland or in anywhere in the world because they don't deserve it. They have links, proven links to Al-Qaeda in Syria. There is footage out there of beheadings. They've been taking part in beheadings. They kill women, children, anyone who goes against their religion. We are here, we are anti-imperialist Ireland. We don't agree with this crap of money rules the world. People rules the world, no money.
Tipperary Peace Prize, in their wisdom, have decided to award a terrorist organisation going under the name of the White Helmets, a prestigious award that has been awarded to numerous individuals over the years, some of whom have been very questionable. But this is the first time that literally a terrorist organisation has been awarded a prize in Tipperary. And as a Tipperary citizen, I was concerned. I decided to come down here and voice my concern of who are these people that are receiving this award? Are they a threat to the state? Have they been vetted? Who brought them here? Who's financing them? Who's paying for their stay? Who are they? I know where I am. I live 24 miles up the road. The majority of people here are local people. We're all Irish people and we're all here voicing concern that terrorism and head choppers being allowed in here. Basically, this is not an organised protest. As you can see, there's various different groups. So I can safely say I wouldn't know 4 people here. This is a spontaneous, I suppose, protest against what we see as an award of terrorism.
We're here today to protest against the presence of the White Helmets, a terrorist organisation in Syria that's been completely discredited. The White Helmets were actually established by British military intelligence and have been funded off the books by the US government and by the British government and by their allies in the European Union. And why we're here to protest is not in Ireland we have a long history of British imperialist groups coming over here and killing our citizens, and we understand that the same thing is happening in Syria today.
The world knows what the White Helmets are. Anybody that does a little bit of research will find out that they're basically a construct of British and NATO Secret Service.
Organisations like the White Helmets have been documented taking part in executions, well-known execution of Abdullah Isa, a young Palestinian boy. They've been photographed carrying guns. They've only operated in areas controlled by Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda. So to say that they're what Martin Quinn of the Tipperary Peace People has said he's getting his information from governments, we're not surprised the governments are telling him to support these groups because they're their proxy in Syria. So we understand why, but we're not going to stand by while Ireland is used as a propaganda tool for imperialism. Irish people are anti-imperialist and we'll always protest against murders in our country.
Can I ask why you joined this protest here at this event, which is honouring a group of volunteers who go in and risk their own lives to rescue people from the rubble when bombs fall in Syria? Why are you protesting against this event?
Well, first of all, I don't believe they're a group of volunteers that risk their own lives. I believe that the White Helmets have been set up by British military intelligence and are funded by the British government and the US government off the books. And what they actually are a propaganda tool to make it look as if they're saving people when actually they're linked to Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda. And it's been documented that members of the White Helmets have been involved in extrajudicial killings in Syria, and they've been removed from their own organisation when they're caught, because it's obviously not a good propaganda tool if you can prove someone is a murderer. But people on the ground in Syria have accused the White Helmets of murder, of rape, and of interfering with children. So it's not somebody that I would want to be given a Peace Prize to.
But has most of that not been, you know, it's unverified, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is unverified. I mean, for example, if you want to take the example of investigative journalist John Pillager, who is obviously very respected around the world, and he has come out and said that the White Helmets are a propaganda tool. There's people like Vanessa Bailey who are exposing exactly what's happening with the White Helmets and where their funding is coming from. It's well known that the man, James LeMaistre, is a British Foreign Office officer. He's an ex-British military intelligence officer, and it's proven that he is the founder of the White Helmets. So to say it's unverified is not an argument that can be put up. Now, while the hotel here might not have known what this event was, the Tipperary Peace people know exactly who the White Helmets are, because they're saying that they're getting their information from governments. Obviously they're getting their information from governments to support their propaganda arm. This is all a whole propaganda arm to support imperialism in Syria here in Ireland.
Yeah, because the organisers say that they did do their research, and they say as far as they could determine, they could find absolutely no reason not to go ahead and award this award to the White Helmets.
But I'd question their sources. They've said their sources are coming directly from the British government and security analysts. Now, security analysts is a word that's used for the likes of MI5 and MI6 who are operating in Syria illegally. The British and American armies have invaded Syria against the wishes of the Syrian people, and when you invade a country, you have no right then to claim that you have justified to be there. The White Helmets are a tool of British imperialism there, so obviously people who support the war are going to support the White Helmets. We stand against all forms of imperialist war, and obviously are opposed to White Helmet terrorists coming into Ireland.
So you wouldn't accept, as the Tipperary Peace Convention said, that this has just all been a smear campaign by keyboard warriors?
Absolutely not. This is not a smear campaign. We stand in support of the Syrian people and their right to self-determination and national sovereignty. We support there's a real Syrian civil defence that existed for 50 years, and they've come out and said the White Helmets are just a propaganda tool. We'd asked the Tipperary Peace people, why did the White Helmets operate solely in areas controlled by al-Nusra? Why have their membership been accused of taking part in the killing of a Palestinian child, Abdullah Isa? Why have they been photographed with guns? This is verifiable for themselves. The point of the matter is that the Tipperary Peace Convention sources rely solely on American and British imperialism. They haven't done their own research. They've just gone with what they've said. Even on RTE, when Martin Quinn was questioned, he couldn't give the answers of where his sources came from. They come from governments and security analysts, which is code for MI6 and MI5.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
That's pretty well.
Well, now much of that we'll see.
Well said. Wow.
You got a huge amount of information, I assume, very, very
Hands
quickly.
off Syria. Hands off Syria. Hands off Syria. 10 o'clock.
Why are you protesting against somebody who in there has said their organisation has saved 100,000 lives?
Well, I dispute that they have saved those 100,000 lives. The White Helmets are actually closely linked to Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra. They've actually been slaughtering Syrian civilians during this invasion of Syria by British and American imperialism. The White Helmets have been established by a man called James LeMaistre, who was a British Foreign Office officer, and they've been funded by the British government and the American government to make propaganda films, to make what's happening in Syria seem palatable to the rest of the world, but actually it's just absolute lies and nonsense that's being put out, propaganda by the imperialist forces operating in Syria.
Have you spoken to the representative of the White Helmets here today? Because just listening to what they had to say,
it's propaganda.
It was pretty much in keeping with their mission statement here to save the greatest number of lives in the shortest possible time and to minimise further injury and damage to property.
Well, this is a propaganda statement, and this is a very polished propaganda performer. He's been trained by the British government and British military intelligence how to deal with the media. What I would say is, if I did get a chance to speak to the White Helmets, I'd ask him about Abdullah Isa, a 12-year-old Palestinian boy who's beheaded by their members. I'd ask him about the photographs of their members carrying guns in areas under occupation and in areas operated by al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda. I'd ask them about the real Syrian civil defence and how they've been actually preventing them from doing their jobs in these areas and killing and taking part in extrajudicial murders.
How do you authenticate your sources for that?
Our sources are coming from people in Syria on the ground, actual innocent civilians who have no reason to lie, the photographic evidence that's been proven, and internationally respected investigative journalists such as John Pillager, who have come out and said that the White Helmets are nothing but a propaganda tool.
Could they be wrong?
Could they be wrong? Could you be wrong?
Can I just ask you a question, because we're doing this because we have loads of footage of the peaceful revolution as well.
Sorry, what peaceful revolution?
Yeah, which one are you talking about? The uprising in 2011.
Yeah, well,
Oh, that's disputable.
Oh yeah, well, can I just ask the question? You just answer, because we're just trying to report both sides. So the question is, are you aware there was a peaceful revolution in Syria in 2011? And that they argued they're fighting against a pretty brutal dictatorship, as all those reports. Human Rights Watch of Amnesty, Human Rights Watch. I just, if you, guys, listen, my voice won't be on the soundtrack, but we have to show both sides.
I'm aware of an invasion of Syria by imperialist forces, and that as the playbook for MI6 and the CIA is to send our operatives into Syria and to stoke tension and to try and put this off as a colour revolution. But in reality, it's actually imperialist operatives going in on the ground, pretending to be something that they're not, and looking for a rebellion. What it is an invasion. You can't use the word rebellion in Syria. You have to use imperialist invasion.
And what
just
about,
looking at Andrew, if you wouldn't mind.
What about the Iranians?
And the Russians.
Who have played a huge part.
Absolutely, and thankfully they have played a part in this.
Maybe I could take that question you cut across.
If
I ask the question, and what about the Iranians and the Russians? What's your view on that? And if you could put the word Iranian and Russian in the answer.
Because Anne's voice won't be on the soundtrack. Sorry for all this bullshit.
The sovereign Syrian government came under attack from British and American imperialism to stage regime change because they're trying to cut up the Middle East to serve the interests of imperialism. What the sovereign Syrian government invited the Russian and Iranian governments to come in to support them, who are their military allies, which they are quite entitled to do. The problem in Syria is the presence of British and US and European imperialism. It's not Russia and it's not Iran. Russia and Iran would not be in Syria if Britain and America hadn't have invaded.
Just a final question.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just put Yassine in?
Put Yassine in.
Yeah, one of the people we interviewed the documentary is a Marxist. He spent 16 years in South prison, and he argued with us, because you are, on the left and he's on the left, and he said that he would argue that Assad is really the representative of Western imperialism in Syria. It's going to be. I just put the point. You've got to put forward both sides on these things, and that would be his argument, in the sense that, all the reports about where they're carving up the allegation of crony capitalism, Makhlouf who owns 6% of the economy, they're all part of the establishment in Syria. Well, that's the evidence that they presented. So
but Yassine did 16 years in prison as well.
Yeah, so what would you say to a Marxist like that says, look at the crony capitalist regime? You know the point. I know. I'm sorry to give you a truncated question now, but just so you have a full.
What I'd say is that the correct position for all anti-imperialists is to support the sovereignty of nations and the right to people for self-determination, and that means that the people of Syria have a right to live free from the invasion of Britain and the US. That's the only answer I can give to a man like that.
Do they have the right to protect themselves?
Absolutely, and thankfully they have against British and US
imperialism.
imperialism.
But if you just put the answer in the question, the Syrians have if I'll say to you, does the Syrian civil society have a right to protect itself?
It's not a. Sorry, I'm sorry, guys. We normally don't have an audience for asking questions for a documentary, but it's just for the content.
It's a loaded question.
Listen, both of you have loaded sides. Can I just answer the question? Thanks very much. This is a very controversial issue. I mean, I've never had a story that's so contradictory.
Yeah, we have to.
Sorry about this.
The Syrian people, like all other peoples, have a right to defend themselves from any foreign invasion.
No, just the question that was put to us by some people would be that where you have a pretty brutal dictatorship which is slaughtering its own people, can I just put the question to you? You could look. It's going to be. Just give us a chance. So, I mean, the thing about, do the people have a right to protect themselves, or should the dictator be protected from foreign invasion? Absolutely. Would the UN have a right in that situation?
The election,
the people of Syria should be protected from foreign invasion.
Yeah, how come they can't pick
the people of Syria is who I'm talking about. We stand here in solidarity with the right of the Syrian people to national self-determination and unity, and to live free from invasion from foreign forces such as the US and the British imperialism.
That's fine. Thanks very much. And just a final question. Do you believe? No, this is still good for the soundtrack, because you obviously believe the Assad regime is a democratic.
It's not a regime, it's a government.
The question is...
No, sorry, it's a government, yeah. I've never made a documentary like this where we actually an audience. It's like being on a talk show where you're trying to get the point across.
Hold on.
If you want to be documentary, you have to stop using that language.
Yeah,
You're talking regime.
We're not dummies.
We don't say the Irish regime, the Fine Gael regime.
actually a lot of people might, but never mind.
Yeah,
well, anyway, can I just ask the question?
Look, one point. When have the British and the Americans ever gone into a country and improved it?
Listen, we protest against Palestine. I think
no, I'm not getting out.
Yemen and so forth. Would you give me a break?
No, I agree with you.
Why are you against Palestine?
I said absolutely.
You just said you protest against
Sorry, I protest
Palestine.
for the Palestinians, and I've done so. Done all sorts of work, and for Yemen as well.
You know who that child is? Do you know who that child is? No, hold on. This is a question. Do you know who that child is?
I think this is a very entertaining documentary for somebody, because this is ridiculous. Can I just ask one last question? This is not what
that child was butchered by the so-called white helmet.
No, answer. You can't edit when you
sorry.
Have you ever done it for the 6 counties of Ireland?
Yeah, just ask a question here. Sorry, are you making a documentary about us now, are you? I just want to ask you a question about do you believe sorry, Anne, just for a question here.
Okay.
Just ask a question, yeah. Just you have to look at Anne for this.
Yeah,
you know?
thank you.
Do you believe the Assad regime is a democratically elected government?
It's not a regime.
Or sorry, hold on. This won't be my voice. Will not be on the soundtrack.
Stop saying a regime.
Well, I think this is a joke, but anyway, we'll try that. Do you believe? Well, I mean,
are you aware there was a general election there 2 years ago?
Have you seen the election results?
Yes.
I think we're liable to be. I think just for your program, I think the police are liable to be sitting here. No, I mean it's just the reason that question came up is, as you know, Assad's father himself. They usually win the election with 90, 89 or 99% of the votes. Have you seen the statistics of the regime? So that's why that question is provoked, you know?
Well, I mean, we have
sorry, just a question, Anne, sorry. This is the most ridiculous thing we're ever involved with. No, just
let him speak and then we'll finish this.
I know, guys, it's okay. Look, this is my voice not going to be on the soundtrack.
Let him speak and then
Look, just ask the question, you know.
I think
do you believe? No, hold on.
If we just stay quiet, I'll answer. You ask me the question, that's it.
No, but I just needed a question, see, though. Sorry, with the eye line there.
Sorry.
The guard. Can we ask that last
wrap
question?
it up, okay?
We will. This is the last question.
Oh, you want to give him the
both
last
sides, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough.
Do you want to just answer that last question?
Yeah, just the question. Do you believe the Assad is a democratic elected president? Just I need a clean cut.
The people who are defending democracy are the people who are standing up against British and US imperialism in Syria.
And what about the Assad government? Is it a legitimate government in your...
democratic?
It's a legitimate government. Syria is a sovereign state, and we support the right of Syria to self-determination and national sovereignty.
Is it democratically elected?
Syria has an election process which is democratic. What is democracy? Who is democracy for? Is the government in America democratically elected? Is Donald Trump democratically elected? People would say he is not.
Thanks very much. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
that.
much
Thanks very much,
indeed.
guys. I appreciate that. You're very good. Thank you.
Can I get your card?
You're a, yeah, I'll give it to you later.
Hands off Syria! 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 Hands off Syria!
Unfortunately for them, we know who has founded the White Helmets. He's a guy called James Mesurier. He'll be seen in some of their promotional videos, ironically enough, given that he's worked with various secret service organisations for Britain and been tied in with organisations like Blackwater. This group of people have minimal, if any, training in rescue work, and they have been found out several times making false videos, fake videos. They've been filmed carrying weaponry, which the Syrian civil defence, bear in mind, is the oldest civil defence in the world, or one of the oldest founding members, never carries weaponry. They have been attacked by people like Al-Nusra Front. Their equipment stolen and sold in Turkey, but they still don't carry weaponry. These guys have been filmed carrying weaponry and being at executions, including a horrendous execution of a Palestinian boy. It doesn't take very long to research these guys. The information is out there. Fortunately, people like Stephen Kinzer, Vanessa Beeley, Eva Bartlett have exposed them totally. They're basically laid open. And it's about time we stop this, you know, Orwellian type doublespeak that's going on. These guys are criminals. They should be exposed as criminals. Leave the Syrian people decide what Syria is about, not America. It's not for America to get involved in illegal wars, funding, and or the British for that matter. Like, when have they ever created democracy? They didn't create democracy in Iran. They didn't create democracy in Libya. You know, they didn't create democracy in Iraq. All of these are basically bandit states, except for Iran now. You know, Libya, Iraq, Syria at the moment. But Syria, thankfully, the Syrian Arab Army, which is 60% Sunni, is winning. You know, if you ask most Syrians, they will say they're Syrian. They won't say they're Shia. They won't say they're Sunni. This is a kind of divide and conquer effort by the British and Americans. They did it in Ireland. Lads, wake up.
The